I didn't yell. I didn't threaten him. I didn't even confront him. I just turned off a single tap. And by sunrise, my neighbor had lost his tenants, his income, and his entire way of life. All because he thought stealing from me would go unnoticed. If you've ever dealt with someone who thought they could take advantage of you without consequences, then this story is going to hit hard. So before we get into it, hit that like button, subscribe to Silent Comeback, and turn on bell notifications, because the stories we share here, they don't just entertain, they deliver justice. I live in a busy capital city somewhere in Asia, and recently, I got what most people would call a steal. A house. Not just any house. A property right in the middle of the city, for way below market price. The previous owners were family friends. They had to leave the country urgently almost 3 years ago, and they needed cash fast. So I stepped in. At the time, it felt like luck. But the moment I moved in, I realized this wasn't just a house. It came with problems. The place had been abandoned mid-renovation. The front door? Not even a proper lock. Just a cheap padlock hanging loosely like it gave up years ago. There was no gate. No boundary. Anyone could walk in. And apparently, they did. On my very first day, I pulled up to my new house and found a stranger's bike parked inside my garage. No note. No explanation. Just sitting there like it belonged. I didn't make a scene. I just rolled it out onto the street, and that same day, I had a gate installed. That night, someone came knocking. Hard. Angry. I didn't answer. But through the window, I saw him, pacing, frustrated, muttering to himself. 15 minutes later, he grabbed the bike and left. That was my first hint. This neighborhood had gotten used to this house being free. Over the next few days, it was small things. People blocking my gate like it didn't matter. Random looks. That subtle tension you feel when you know you're not exactly welcome. But nothing serious. Until last week, I was in the shower, and something felt off. The water pressure dropped. Not completely, but enough to notice. At the same time, I heard it. A low mechanical hum. My neighbor's water pump. Now, that alone isn't strange. In houses like ours, pumps are normal, especially for multi-story buildings. But this wasn't just any neighbor. He was an older guy, living in a 3-story house next door. He stayed on the ground floor and rented out the top 2 floors for income. And from what I'd been told, he wasn't happy I bought this house. Not at all. He'd argued with the previous owners, tried to stop the sale, and when that didn't work, he just stayed bitter. So when I heard that pump running, right as my pressure dropped, something clicked. I waited, did nothing, just stood there, listening. Eventually, the pump stopped, and like magic, my water pressure came back. Perfect. Normal. Instantly. That's when the suspicion turned into something else. Certainty. I started testing it. Again. And again. Every time his pump ran, my pressure dropped. Every time it stopped, mine came back. Now here's the thing. The house had some plumbing issues. Small leaks here and there. And over the past few years, the water bills had been unusually high. At the time, everyone blamed the leaks. But now, it didn't add up anymore. Because leaks don't turn on and off based on your neighbor's schedule. This guy had been walking into this property for years, using it like his own utility source, quietly siphoning water, while no one was here to stop him. And now, he hadn't stopped. He just assumed he could keep getting away with it. I had options. I could confront him, call the authorities, get lawyers involved. But honestly, It wasn't about the money. Water here is cheap. Even with everything, washing dogs, cars, garden, my bill barely hit $5 a month. No, this was about something else. Entitlement. That quiet arrogance of someone who thinks, what's yours is mine, and you won't do anything about it. And that didn't sit right with me. So I decided I would teach him a lesson without ever stepping onto his property, without breaking a single law. The plan? Simple. I turned off my main water supply. That's it. But timing was everything. A few days later, I waited, watched, listened, and then I heard it. His pump kicked on. That low, steady hum. That was my moment. I walked over to the valve and turned it off. Now here's where things get interesting. In our system, rooftop tanks use a float valve. When the water level drops, the valve opens and signals the pump to run. But if there's no water coming in, that valve never closes, which means the pump keeps running and running and running. Dry and running a pump without water? It's one of the worst things you can do. It overheats, strains, burns itself out. That's what I expected. Maybe his pump would fail. Maybe he'd have to replace it. A small inconvenience. A quiet message. But what I didn't expect was everything else. Around 3 a.m., I woke up. Voices. Confused. Panicked. Coming from next door. Lights flickering. Doors opening. People talking over each other. Then shouting. Turns out, the pump didn't just burn out. It kept pulling power. 4 hours. And his outdated wiring couldn't handle it. The entire system is overloaded. Blew out. Power gone. Water gone. Everything. And here's where it gets worse for him. Those tenants upstairs, they weren't just annoyed. They were furious. Because where I live, water and electricity aren't optional. They're legally required. By morning, arguments turned into complaints. Complaints turned into official reports. And within 2 days, everything collapsed. Both tenants moved out, filed cases, and the authorities stepped in. No court needed. Clear violation. Immediate penalties. He got fined $500, which, here, is a lot. But that wasn't all. He had to refund deposits, fix the entire electrical system, repair the pump, and until everything was up to code, he couldn't rent out the place again. His only income? Gone. And just like that, the man who thought he could quietly take from me lost everything. A few days later, he came to my gate, calm, careful, and asked, "Did you turn off your water recently?" I looked at him, smiled slightly, and said, "Yeah, had a leak. Turned it off till the plumber fixed it." He paused, just for a second, but I saw it. That moment where everything clicked. He knew, but he couldn't prove anything. Couldn't accuse me. Couldn't do a thing. He just nodded, said, "Oh, okay," and walked away. By the end of the week, he was packing his things, moving in with his daughter, because he couldn't afford to stay anymore. And me? I'm getting my plumbing fixed, removing any external connections, making sure no one ever taps into my supply again. All from one decision, one moment, one turn of a tap. Sometimes, revenge isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It doesn't need confrontation. Sometimes, it's just letting people face the consequences of their own actions. If this story gave you that satisfying feeling of justice, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel Silent Comeback, and turn on bell notifications because you will get updates for upcoming videos. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in this situation? Also, if you have your own revenge story or something like that and want me to make a video on your story, share your story in the comments section or reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or email so I can post it next. Thanks for watching.